Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to my channel, East West Reviews. Thanks for joining me on this week's episode of Bad Batch, episode 6. Another thriller, another awesome week of Bad Batch TV show. Before we get into it, I just want to say thanks for everyone who's returning back to this channel. You have no idea how much your continued support means to me. I really do appreciate it. And for anyone who's joining me for the first time, this is your first video, thank you so much for joining me and clicking on this video. Hopefully this is something you can enjoy, you can like, comment, maybe subscribe, and then hopefully you can join in the conversation in the future. So definitely like, comment, and subscribe if you did enjoy this video. And without further ado, let's get into it. So this episode starts off in a new way that was pretty refreshing to me. Instead of seeing the crew flying through space, trying to find somewhere to land, lay low, and come up with some sort of plan for survival, we see them actually living in Sig's bar. That not really living in it, but they're actually having some downtime, engaging with patrons, teaching Omega how to shoot a bow, and it seems like they're actually having a good time for once, which is kind of nice to see. We also see that Omega herself is kind of coming along in her own way. She's finding more ways to become useful to the crew, being able to use the bow to defend herself and potentially combat others. So it's just nice to see that she's also trying to improve herself and really find her spot in the crew. And it seems that they're really encouraging this as well, that they're teaching her how to use it. So one of the first points I want to make out for this episode is, of course, in the last video, I mentioned Sig sort of using the crew for her own gains. We see that she's sort of extorting them in this episode. We see that she signs the crew up for a mission that they, of course, had no knowledge of. They didn't agree for it. They didn't make any prior deals, as we know Hunter wasn't too sure about her in the last episode. And it turns out that nothing formal was ever made between them. But she comes right out and tells them, hey, you make me money, I give you money, and I can protect you from others, probably from others in the underworld or anyone out there who's really trying to find information on the crew, as she knows that the information on them is very valuable with someone like Fennec Shand after them. It seems basically like she's telling them, hey, keep working for me and I won't give away your location to everyone in the system so you don't have to keep running away. It also seems that this partnership also has another side to it. I think this can also be very beneficial to the Bad Batch as well, sort of in a counterintelligence way. I think that through Sig, they're able to go into areas that they wouldn't before. These missions sort of take them to places that involve them with new levels of society, lets them know what's going on out there, and gives them a whole new world of engagement outside of just being soldiers. They're sort of going in there as civilians and hired guns. So it's definitely a lot more different than what they're used for. And Hunter kind of points that out himself in this episode. So one of those moments that can benefit the crew really happens in this episode here. Of course, with them meeting the sisters Rafa and Trace, who we all know from the last season of Clone Wars, who became friends with Ahsoka Tano, and they all got into a bunch of mess, and I guess everyone's lives sort of changed for the better after that. So we see what's happened to them since then. Seems like they're still running jobs for a group of people, albeit in a different light and for a much better cause, I guess it seems, than what they would previously do. So it's nice to see some growth from Rafa, especially from Rafa, and Trace still seems to be herself, which is really nice to see as well. And on top of seeing that they're doing these jobs, they also seem to be much more capable as well, and a lot more grown. Rafa was really nice with the blaster rifle in this episode. I don't remember her having so much skill or competence in season 7 of the Clone Wars, but she was really holding her own in those gunfights along with Hunter, even to the point where she was watching his back for a few minutes, and he really put his trust in her. So that showed some capability to her, that she was able to keep up with Hunter in the middle of this fight. So after all of the battle is done, we see that the security force has been terminated due to help from the droids. Ironically, as some of the Bad Batch members pointed out, I thought that was actually really funny. We see that the crew takes the commander droid information for themselves, but not without creating a copy for Rafa and Trace to take back for them. I think it was instantly realized by Tech and the rest of the crew that the sisters were there for a much more noble reason than they were. So it didn't seem right to sort of take this information back to someone that they had no idea who was going to use it. So perhaps to have it be also given into the right hands, quote unquote, it might ease this burden of what they're having to do. So we see the sisters take this back to their ship, and we see that they were working for someone who honestly, at the end of that credit scene, I started screaming when I couldn't see whose cloak that was. I wanted so badly to know who the sisters could possibly be working for, because there's a number of notable members of the rebellion out there who we haven't seen yet, who could be behind the scenes sort of conspiring to form this group. But I'll get into that later on in my predictions. So speaking of predictions, or I guess previous predictions, oh my God, how about Wrecker, guys? Uh, it's finally happening. I think this is finally the point where we can say that these predictions on Wrecker are no longer just predictions. I think we finally have proof in the matter that Wrecker's headaches were his inhibitor chip starting to activate and turn him into a compliant clone of Order 66. So we've seen him take multiple blows to the head. I wasn't too sure what it could really mean in the overall scheme, but it turns out that they were all sort of taking a toll on him one episode at a time, and we finally see that with that hit in this episode, he falls to the ground, and he starts to mumble the same sort of rhetoric that we saw Crosshair emitting in the first episode. Good soldiers follow orders. So luckily he snapped back from it. I didn't think he was actually going to snap back from it in this case. I was actually really surprised. I kind of thought he was going to turn fully here. But luckily he did, because the crew really needed him in that moment. And they wouldn't be able to handle a crazed Wrecker along with these security droids. So even though Wrecker, he sort of started to turn and he came back, I think that we're definitely not out the woods yet. I think that Wrecker is definitely going to turn if he hits his head seriously another time. That could be the final straw, and after that he's gone. But I also think that there could be other ways that Wrecker can possibly turn. And here's when we get into the predictions. So I kind of predict that we will see other members of the former rebellion, possibly some other Jedi remnants who exist out there in the galaxy. I think that if Wrecker were to see one of these individuals, I think his programming might kick in similar to Crosshair, and he might target these individuals. It might not be to the point where he was going to attack the Bad Batch crew himself or Omega, but I think he will recognize some of those other figures as enemies at this point in time. And to get to my biggest predictions, of course, the hooded figure at the end of this episode that the sisters were speaking to. Who could this possibly be? I think it's one of two people, possibly. I can't think of other people in the universe who would want information such as a commander battle droid at this point in time. So the first person and the most notable person I'd probably say it could be is Senator Bail Organa. So we know he's very instrumental when it comes to the creating of the rebel army. We see him in countless fiction pieces. Force Unleashed, he helps the rebellion start up. Of course, at the end of Clone Wars, he starts the rebellion. We see at the Revenge of the Sith movie, he's starting to start the rebellion at the heads of Yoda and Obi-Wan, who go into hiding. So I think that he's definitely the person in the cloak, and he would definitely be someone who would be in need of something like a clone army to sort of defend and fight back against this clone army who's turned and joined the Empire. And there is one other person who it could possibly be, but I only speak their name because they have a relationship with the sisters that we all know that goes back. And of course, that person is Ahsoka Tano. So it wouldn't be surprising if they all still kept in touch, but they all had a pretty significant role to play in each other's lives. So it really wouldn't be surprised if they were all working together to try and build this rebellion. But at the same time, I don't see Ahsoka Tano wanting to have an army of battle droids, especially knowing what they're capable of fighting them for so many years. So that part just doesn't make sense to me. Of course, it's possible. Who knows what her motives could be these days? But I'm definitely going to stick with the fact that it could be Bail Organa. He seems like the most likely person in the rebellion side who would want these battle droids for his own gains. So another thing to really speculate on here is, of course, the benefactor who the Bad Batch is working for. Who hired Sig to go and get this information? It could be anybody, honestly, but I really think that it could be someone. And hear me out here. I think it could be someone who's left over from the Separatist army. So we know that Anakin took out the remainder of their leaders on Mustafar, but I don't know if that was all of them. I've someone correct me, of course, if that's not the case, but I think there were some that remained, some that probably weren't on Mustafar when it happened, and they definitely would have gone into hiding after that. So they seem to be the one of the few people who would really want to have this information on the battle droids. Of course, that was their army in the Clone Wars. They don't want to succeed all this power to the Empire. They still want to have some sort of control. They don't like how things are going. So it would make sense for me to be someone from the Separatist army who's still trying to continue this fight, thinking that it's not over. And I couldn't see anyone in the Empire wanting this information. They seem to be very stuck on having human soldiers for their army. But they're transitioning away from the clones, trying to have civilians involved. So it makes no sense for me to have the benefactor want to be anyone of the Empire. So I definitely think it's someone who's related to the Separatists. It could be some weird, third, fourth party. Again, I couldn't think who else it could possibly be, so I'm going to stick with it that the Separatists could come back and show themselves in this, wanting the droid army to come back. So to further on that, I just want to bring in an idea on why that could be the case. So I've mentioned before a possibility of things being brought in from the Battlefront 2 game. I've mentioned the Clone Rebellion on Kamino, but in Battlefront 2 there's another thing that happened that I think could appear now with the information of battle droids possibly coming into play in this series. So in Battlefront 2, there's a mission after the Empire is formed, where former clones, they have to go and fight an insurgence of battle droids that had just been manufactured, and the Separatists had made a small comeback, trying to gain some power in the universe with the Empire back, or with the Empire existing. So I think this could be something else that the Bad Batch team could bring into the show. Will it happen? Maybe. I think it'd really be a stretch. But we see that Disney's really bringing back a lot of these older stories, things that weren't considered canon from games, expanded universe. So honestly, who knows? But I think that would be really cool to see. That's going to be it for me today, folks. Hope you enjoyed this episode on Bad Batch Episode 6. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, or dislike if you really feel like it. But definitely let me know what you thought about in the comments down below regarding any of these predictions and the future of the show. Whether you think when Sig is going to rat out the crew, because it's only a matter of time. When Wrecker is going to turn, because it's only a matter of time. Also, who are the sisters working for? Also, who is the crew unknowingly working for? So definitely let me know, and I'll see you guys next week for the next episode. Bye.